Hello, and welcome to another edition of Bomber's Hit List. I told Moen to use he did the rundown on the setup for the show, and I used the wrong background, so I apologize about that. But welcome to another edition of our show here on the College Football Mafia Network. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and we had a special thing going tonight. We're sort of graduating from the season being over. We have a lot of stuff coming. A lot of more special features. We're going to do stuff for members only. It should be a lot of fun. So we welcome everybody being here tonight on a special Wednesday edition of the College Football Mafia Network. Whatever show this is, it doesn't matter. Rundown or hit list, it doesn't matter. I want to thank everybody for being here on a Wednesday night. It is a special time. We want to get ahead of some programming that's going to be coming a little bit later in the evening on other shows. Want to get ahead of that. So we appreciate everybody being here with us, at least at the beginning of the show. We're going to talk about the college football playoff a little bit, sort of the fallout on how that worked and maybe how it could have been done better. And then we're going to talk realignment, which is something I know everybody's near and dear to your heart. On the College Football Mafia network of shows, we love realignment. Always have, always will. And that's sort of where we are. It is going to be a big deal going forward. And certainly the offseason started the day after the CFP picks came out because there's only 12 teams still playing football. All the other 133 or whatever, 121 teams aren't playing football right now. And so on their mind is, what do we do for next year? We got recruiting, we got NIL. All those things are coming. Before we get going, I want to make sure everybody follows me on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, network of channels, College Football Mafia network of shows. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would really help us. Make sure to leave a comment or question. And if there's anything you think we should be doing, certainly let us know. And last but not least, memberships. If you guys want to become members, just go down to the next to the comment section. There's a little dollar sign. Click that dollar sign, and you can either use a super chat, which we prefer, and defer to all those comments. And then super chats always are first, member chats are second, and then everybody else, obviously, comments are free to be used. All right, before I bring in our special and very special guest, which I think everybody's going to really love, I want to make sure everybody knows this is where we're at. It's the second edition. Yes, I'm saying the second edition of our Bull Pick'em. Where did I put that page? Oh, I closed it, I guess. So we brought out a second edition of the Bull Pick'ems that we did last year. I'll get the page and I'll bring it up. I must have closed it. But I hope everybody will enjoy doing that. We are going to do gifts, prizes. For the first 3 people, they will receive a prize from us here at the College Football Mafia Network. And it's free to participate. So as soon as I can find that page, I don't know what I did with it. I had it on just a second ago. Anyway, I'll get to it and we'll bring it back up. All right. Since I don't have that queued up, I'm going to go right to our special guest tonight. This guy needs no introduction, so I'm not going to introduce him at all. That would be back on the College Football Mafia network of shows, Immaculate. How we doing, Immaculate?
Good to be back with you, Bomber. How you doing, man? Happy to see you guys here.
Oh, I'm so excited for this. Since you and I started talking about doing this again last week, I've been on pins and needles. It's been fun to sort of prep, get people involved. But as you know, everybody around here likes to talk realignment. So let's sort of dive into that right now. By the way, everybody can see Immaculate's Twitter. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Basically, go to his profile, hit that little bell icon so you can see all of his tweets as they come out during the day. All right, Immaculate, while I queue up this tournament page, which I'm not sure what I did with it, why don't you kind of tell everybody, what are your thoughts after this last CFP run through?
Well, they're mixed. I do think that we're actually seeing a little bit better kind of decision-making by the CFP now that we have 12 teams. They're being held to certain rules. But at times they're being a little picky about bypassing what seem to be the rules because they're not really clear about anything, right? They say we favor this, we favor that, but it is never really like a hard line like this is how we do this.
Right.
So I think it's good fun, but I think my big takeaway is we thought that adding more teams would make it better and make everyone happy. It's kind of just added in more people who have strong feelings about it, which seems to have dialed up the negativity by, tenfold. Because with 4 teams, most people aren't even involved. They don't really
Yes.
care. But with 12, and then, how many teams after that are that close to getting in, that's a lot of angry people. So that's been interesting to see. That's kind of been an unintended consequence. I know we used to talk about those a lot, the unintended consequences of these decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And a little bit later in the show, we're gonna go through it. You through the whole season, you were trying to do a breakdown of the top 25, and then it was the CFP picks. And I was following yours better than I was following the make it up rules that the CFP was using in their panel. So we're going to dive into that in depth in a little bit later. We're going to start off with realignment news. First off, I want to make sure I get this out there so I don't forget. Moen just got it working, so I want to make sure everybody has access to it. Okay, here's what it looks like. We're doing the Bowl Mania, College Football Mafia Bowl Mania. Here's the link. We encourage everybody, if you're watching the show or you come to it a little bit later, make sure you sign up. It's free, and it's fun. You guys get to pick against us. Last year, I think I came in 4th or 5th. Just so everybody knows, this pick is a reverse pick. You pick points per game. You don't pick just the winners and losers. So it really matters how you put those points on each game. The ones you have the highest belief in, do the highest point level. The ones you're not sure, it's a 50-50, put the lowest points. But I'm encouraging everybody to do that. So I put that link in the comment section. Do that after the show or while we're listening right now. That'd be great. All right. So first thing we want to jump into is realignment. And let me bring up this first tweet. And I'm going to have you break this down, Immaculate, because it's this thing Brett McMurphy put out about Northern Illinois University?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, as he's talking about here, Northern Illinois is considering joining them as a football-only school. I know some of you guys, if you're following online, we've been talking about this a lot lately, where Northern Illinois and Toledo were both considering this. It seems that the story is that Toledo has kind of dropped out. They have a lot of inter-Ohio connections that might have pulled them out of this, but Northern Illinois seems to still be barreling forward with this. By folks that have looked at the math on it, it's actually considered that Northern Illinois will make more as a football member of the Mountain West than they do as a full member of the MAC.
Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah.
You can make more money moving up, doing a step up in your conference for football than you would for all your sports in what is deemed a sort of lesser conference.
Yeah. And if they join a conference like the Horizon, they might actually, I don't know, the Horizon might actually get as many teams in the basketball tournament as the MAC does or more. So they might double up in both ways. So, and it's interesting with the MAC inviting so much of its additions to the East, Buffalo, Massachusetts. Maybe for Northern Illinois, that's just kind of making it a little bit easier to go west. I don't know.
So let's sort of circle this back for everybody just to finish from Brett McMurphy's tweet. If NIU joins, the Mountain West will have 9 football conference teams. And I believe you have to have at least 8. So the Pac-12 is still missing 1 football playing school. So that would give them 9 football playing universities, and it would be 10 basketball members.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, if they stop at this, that would be 8 teams for football. So where you'd have 8 games. So it'd be an 8-game schedule. So they'd have 4 OOC games to schedule. So that's, one, if they're not at 9, so that's one more that they could get where they can maybe get payouts from, larger schools that have them come around to get kicked around. It's the reality of that business. Or maybe they decide to go on from that. I'm not sure. But it does seem like this is the final one that we've had talked about going forward. It was Northern Illinois and Toledo possibly. I really didn't think it was going to happen. Either one of them. I just thought it wasn't enough. But if this happens, this is interesting. And, then it pairs up with what you have there with UC Davis as the other move, because they're the opposite side of the spectrum.
So right now, Grand Canyon and UC Davis, let's go to that tweet. So the Mountain West put out a tweet, and these are all these schools that are currently currently in the Mountain West. Any schools that they would add, including Northern Illinois, would add to this list. But I mean, I think that looks like a pretty good basketball conference, don't you?
I would think so. They've lost some of their power, but they've definitely added. UC Davis, GCU, big ads in that regard. UNLV should be good. I think New Mexico has been pretty good. UTEP. So we'll see. Some of them are going to have to rise up now. They're going to have to rise up. But I think you could see the newcomers actually run the show here. I wouldn't be surprised to see GCU win this whole thing.
I was just going to say the last few years, GCU has qualified for the big dance. They've been playing in the tournament. So I think if you want to make money through your bonus program for qualifying for the tournament and then winning games, that's a good way to supplement the conference payout, isn't it?
It's definitely helpful. And at this level, that's actually like a larger percentage. You know what I mean? Whereas what they might be getting on their total media payout, for them, getting more credits in the tournament's a pretty big deal. So I think you're probably going to see a lot of focus in the Mountain West on working on their basketball.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to justify the football part of this conference. Yeah. It's interesting that UNLV is still in there. They're like the jewel in the crown at the Mountain West. They got, I think, somewhere between 18 and $25 million to stay in the Mountain West Conference. It's not all paid out in one lump sum, but they were also paid off to stay in the conference when they were getting ready to jump to the Pac-12.
Yeah, and you kind of think naturally like, oh, it might have been a better move to go, but maybe it's not. In that conference, is UNLV the bottom dweller? Whereas now in this conference, does UNLV rise to the top? And what more could they do at the top of this conference than at the bottom of that conference? So people say, oh, they make more money there. Sure. But you can maybe build a program better in this conference and be the top of this conference.
Right. UNLV definitely. I mean, they played football really well this last year. If the Mountain West is going to keep football as a sport, it looks to me like looking at these teams, New Mexico, well, they just lost their coach. Bronco Mendenhall went to Utah State University. But you still have Wyoming in there. They've been competitive in football in the past. Obviously, UNLV, San Jose State has made it to a championship game in the Mountain West before. Nevada has been good. I think Hawaii, you never know what you're going to get with Hawaii. Then Air Force every 3 or 4 years puts together a pretty good program. So
I think into Texas too with UTEP.
Oh yeah, you're right. I forgot about UTEP. And UTEP, when they were in the old WAC, UTEP used to be a thorn in the side of BYU. Believe me. So it's not to say they couldn't jump up and do it again. So as it stands, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 football schools right now. Or no, 8. I'm sorry. UC Davis.
9 would be Northern Illinois.
Yeah. Northern Illinois would be 9. Yeah, that's right. Anything else you want to say about this Northern Illinois news?
If that happens, when you're going into the Pac, I have a pretty complicated suggestion for them that I think that we might see them happen or that they should do. Northern Illinois as a football-only ad is kind of a precursor because that's what it involves. I think for a Western Conference to go east, they have to be a little different.
Right.
It's not so straightforward. It's not adding full members to the East. It's football members. So they're going to have to work on partnerships with other conferences to help make that happen. So if that happens, to me, that's maybe a sign. So that's pretty much the big deal for me on this Northern Illinois deal.
And I think we need to make sure we call out Northern Illinois as the team that beat Notre Dame in Notre Dame Stadium. So
Mhm.
they were on a roll at the beginning of the season. It dropped off a little bit later, but I mean, anytime you can add a team to your conference that has been competitive in football, that can't hurt, right?
Yeah. I mean, the travel will be tough for them, no
Yeah,
doubt.
that's true. We
Like
haven't talked about travel.
for
You're
that
right.
football team, the travel will be difficult. But
Yeah,
um, I dare say, with a little bit more money, maybe a little bit better, and we see that lineup. I mean, that's kind of a wide open lineup. Like you could compete to be the top dog there. UNLV, Northern Illinois, Air Force. Who's going to rise to the top of that conference, and what will that mean? Will they have we're doing conference playoffs or not? Are they going to have any kind of access to anything whatsoever? There's still a lot of unknowns.
agreed. Before we get to questions related to this first realignment news,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to invite everybody to go through and leave your comments. Give us your feedback on kind of what this news is, and Immaculate and I are going to go through those comments right now, and we'll get to as many as we can. But I invite everybody to put those comments in there. Again, if you want to do a super chat, that's also very helpful. We defer to all super chats. Before we do comments in general, let's do some shout outs. Timothy Green was first in the house. This has nothing to do with your question, but I would love to see the Big 12 win the national championship. 99.9% of the people say there's no way. Hey, but who knows, right? Let's go Mountaineers. I appreciate that, Timothy Green. I would not put it out of the realm of reason. We know transfer portal and NIL has changed the game, and it's really taken the talent that used to sit on the third and fourth string at Ohio State and Alabama, and it's disseminating down into schools that you wouldn't necessarily think that they would originally consider. So I definitely think a Big 12 team can win the whole thing, and I believe if we go to 16 and we get 2 guaranteed from both the ACC and the Big 12, it even will make it an easier opportunity to make that happen. Let's see here. I'm going to get back to that comment later. Let's see. But the Big Lubbock checks in, says ASU will beat Texas. What do you think about that, Immaculate?
Texas has the thoroughbreds, but ASU has the they just kind of look like
They're warm right now. They are warm right now.
They're just playing more as a team.
Yep.
I remember I got slack for it a lot talking about ASU through the years, saying, so you got to look at this. And I know when they lost their receiver, people were like, oh, this is huge. And I said, not really. And I know that looked ridiculous to people. But if you were watching the game when Tyson went out, a walk-on receiver went in and got a touchdown pass after that. It's just different there. It's kind of hard to explain. Like, I think Dillingham is really kind of showing the future for what everyone else who doesn't have all the blue chips and the big money. Like, this is how you do it. Watch Dillingham, get a guy in your program that gives a damn about it. Don't go mercenary style. And it's going to be interesting to see. I think they could win that game, or we're going to see the difference in their horses. And
yeah, the one concern I would just warn everybody is you're given basically a month to Steve Sarkisian to tool up to win not 1 but 2 games. Obviously, they have to get past Clemson,
and that's going to be the focus. That is going to be his focus. They're playing pretty good right now.
And I agree with that. I think they could tool up for Clemson and maybe get bushwhacked by an Arizona State. I could see that happen.
Possible.
We'll have to see. That bye makes a big difference, I think.
It's going to be a tough travel game for ASU.
Sure. Yeah.
This is what they want. They want to be kind of a nationwide reaching program, an institution. So if they're going to be playing up there with the big boys, they need to learn to, cross the country, so to speak. Like playing.
That's why I was so upset BYU didn't get in, because BYU does travel. Yep. BYU goes everywhere, and it wouldn't matter what stadium they were in, they would have had an advantage. That Kansas game is going to stick in my craw for the next 40 years, I think. Stormy Cyclone, another member of the Mafia family, says, hello, guys. Realignment talk. I guess it's that time again. Would love to see the top of the ACC join the Big 12 and have an East-West conference. Well, you know where I'm at on that. I would love to take private equity, buy the top 4 or 5 brands out of the ACC, put them with the Big 12, and then call it good. I would love to see that. It's been a little bit since we've gotten Immaculate's opinion on that. How are you looking now at what is basically a standoff in the ACC, and February 1st, 2025 is looming?
Yeah. The whole situation there really cooled off. Now, I don't necessarily think that means that Florida State's situation and Clemson's situation has gotten worse in their lawsuits, but it kind of seems like everyone is pulled back from pushing it. Now, that could just be for the season, and we see it pick up real quick,
right?
And we're back to the races.
Especially because Florida State is out of it, right? They have nothing to look forward to but next year.
Yeah, they're already back into this. We've seen some whisperings of it,
right?
But it also could mean that in the meantime, maybe some reconciliation happened. I mean, interestingly enough, I think Florida State's kind of been well, it might have seemed ludicrous last year, the talk, but I think everyone saw the situation this year that it almost happened to SMU. And they went to a conference championship game. I mean, there was serious talk about not having them in. Even the CFP committee said they were tossing it in there between them and Alabama.
Yeah.
And so I think the ACC folks, that little bit of a scare is kind of like, it almost just happened to us again. Like, maybe we're not enemies. And so, look, that stuff's going to have to get figured out one way or another. If Florida State and those folks want to leave, maybe it's time to come to a settlement. It's not going to be a small one. Otherwise, I think some of this talk about there being a group of schools willing to leave and start a new conference, I would almost be talking about that just as much as talk about a bunch of them joining the Big 12. And if I was in the Big 12 and some of the schools in that Big 12, I would be worried about that, because you don't want that to switch. You know what I mean? You don't want that group of schools to start talking to your top schools. So I would just I would let that one play itself out. I don't know. I don't want to be like doom and gloom, but there's a lot of unknown about that ACC situation right now.
Something's going to have to become more certain for them to re-up that contract.
Yes. And I think after the house, it's going to start to go.
Right. Jan Hulk checking in from Slovenia. Good to see you, Jan. He says, hey, all. Good to have you here. Friends call me Sean checking in. Look who's in the house. Look at that, Immaculate. People remember. No more P4 expansion without either guaranteed CFP spots or conference playoffs.
We're starting to see some talk. And I know, talking with Greg, he had an idea, and I think we're starting to see some of the ideas that they'll use to test it. Because one thing that these conferences won't want to do, my opinion, is they won't want to go into negotiation discussions with networks on them purchasing the rights to these new conference playoffs without having any statistics on their side.
Yeah.
Because they'll get lowballed. So I think they're going to do some things while they're still waiting for the bowl contracts to end and before they can get rid of the CFP. They're going to create some strange things to get themselves some statistics to use in those negotiations. And real quick, if I could, I know Clint said they got dark. I didn't mean for it to get dark, but it's just one of those situations where, keep your eyes open and just kind of watch for the situation. But I wouldn't push it too hard about the Big 12, if that makes sense.
Sure. Rock Chalk 94. It's been a minute, Rock. Where have you been? I've missed you. He's an OG, a guy who goes back right to the very beginning. Thanks for being here, Rock. It's great to see you. All I've heard is UNC, UVA to the Big 10, Louisville, Miami, FSU, Clemson, Pitt, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State, and Virginia Tech. I'm guessing
the Big 12.
Big 12. He didn't put that in there, but that's what I'm guessing. The first 6 are open to private equity to pay off ACC. Gore, the Tobacco Road schools are holdouts like Utah and Arizona State.
I don't know. I mean, look, if that was to happen for the Big 12, that would be a serious game changer. In fact, P3 style game changer. In my opinion.
I would agree with you. If you go to 20 teams, three conferences.
Yeah, just comparing brands.
I think that's the only way you do it, though. I think it's got to be something like that.
It's certainly one way, and it would certainly help. It's just, I mean, if those schools are interested in doing it, I don't know. I mean, I know Swaim has more connections than I did.
Well, I was just going to follow that up. He had 2 more comments. I'll put them back to back. So previous comment, and then it says about are expected to split to Big 10 and Big 12 to top it off at 24 Big 12 schools. Swaim told me before he died, by the way. Greg Swaim, rest in peace. He suffered for a very long time, finally passed away last month. He will be missed. Last comment is then the idea is once ACC teams pay off their gore in the Big 12, they join an SEC Super League. But to have FSU comes to Miami in the Big 12 at all is an impressive coup by Brett Yormark. And I would just say this. Look, the Big 12 is going to do everything humanly possible to bring over the best brands from the ACC. Are they going to be able to do that? Who knows? But we know this. The SEC really doesn't want to expand. They're pretty happy where they're at. They might be forced to, but I find that a little hard to believe. And the Big 10, I don't think goes past 20. So Greg had an idea of like 72 teams in 3 conferences. I told him I thought that was too much. In fact, I told him I thought it was going to be between 40 and 60, somewhere in between there. So I know Greg had ideas, but that's just not one that I was really into. I think there's not enough money to support those other schools going to the SEC and the Big 10. They don't want to split their revenue. They don't want to give up anything they've got.
If there was going to be something to go to 24 for the Big 10, it would have to be something like Notre Dame, Stanford, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Miami, and then one more. And because you got so many brands in there. And that's the one thing where I didn't quite see in that the concept there is what's going on with Notre Dame.
They're an extra anywhere they go.
If we go to these conference playoffs, they're talking about conference rankings being the deciding factor one way or another. That's pretty telling. Like that's kind of a shot across the bow. Notre Dame saying conference rankings are going to just determine this. That means you're out. Like that was the first thing I thought when I saw it. I was like, if there's anything having to do with conference, that means Notre Dame is out. Now, how do you get them out when they're on the board? I don't know. But that if there's going to be any kind of a big move, Notre Dame's going to have to be part of that equation.
FF18 Buffs, good to see you. Another newer member of the Mafia family. Glad to have you here. Hello, all Sco Buffs. Looking forward to this show. Thanks. We appreciate it. We've been looking forward to it too. Let's see here. Let me scroll down to get some more comments. Clint Moses checking in. Oregon State in the house. Go Big 12, the most elite conference ever assembled. You got that right, Clint. You know what you're talking about. You're a smart man. Illini Ted checking in, and another member of the Mafia family. Season almost over and realignment back to the forefront.
It's on the menu.
That's what we've been waiting for a long time. I couldn't wait to get this show on the road talking about this other stuff. Let me get to a few more shout outs. Adam Immaculate, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Hopefully.
Clint Moses says you're looking good.
Oh, thank you, buddy.
I don't know. Maybe he's stalking you or something.
At this point in time, we'll take it.
Steve Moser, another member of the Mafia family, saying, "Oh, that's the best way to score it." I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but there you go. Conundrum: Bill Belichick's contract is 400 pages long. I don't know if that's true, but Bill Belichick is the new head coach of the University of North Carolina Tar Heels. Can you imagine, and even saying that 6 months ago, what people's reactions would have been?
I'm really kind of shocked that he ended up being the head coach. And I kind of wonder if for him to get what he wants, he had to go through that.
Right.
Okay, you can become the general manager, but first we need you to get this in order.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, the state of North Carolina is one of those future places where a lot more money is going to be coming in there. People, it's expected to become a pretty big deal. And I kind of think he's trying to get in there just as that wave is going to be coming, and to help that become the place that's kind of at the forefront of it. There's a lot of financial money there. And once they can start to get involved, it's going to be pretty heavy. And if you're the general manager, your hands are on all of that. So,
in my opinion, they brought him in to build up their football brand. He's there a year, 2 max. He has his son right behind him. He's the next coach in waiting. And then they build North Carolina up so that they can honestly say we're worth $65 million. We should be in the Big Ten. That's my opinion. I think that's their goal. I don't think have Bill Belichick be the coach for 8 years or anything.
If they were completely on their own and they weren't tied to North Carolina State now by the Board of Governors, I think North Carolina could go wherever the hell they want.
Oh, sure.
I don't think there's any problem getting the Big Ten or the SEC to take them. Now the problem is, how do we make ourselves so good that they're willing to take North Carolina State in order to get us?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's kind of what I'm seeing out of this is like they're doing something so. I mean, this is like sitting at a poker table and taking all your chips and pushing them in. It either goes wonderful or you're done. Like, you know, and my warning to them as an Iowa fan is just look how the Ferentz situation went. Be very careful.
Shonsky checking in. Another member of the Mafia family says, hi, everyone. Good to see you, Shonsky. Thanks for taking the time on a Wednesday night. Joe Z, good to see you. Look at he's saying immaculate. There you go.
Jose.
There you go. Michael Smith checking in. Good to see you, Michael. It's been a minute with you as well. Clemson is beating Texas first. Longhorns no better than Georgia Tech. I think Clemson has a puncher's chance. I was surprised they beat SMU. And Texas is not the Texas I think everybody thought they were.
On paper, Texas should plow right through them, but just I don't know what's going on there. Personally, I think it's the quarterback. I've not been impressed with their quarterback ever since he came back. So I think if Clemson gets at him, we've seen that. We saw it with Georgia. That's how they do it. They get at him, they get on him. And I don't really know if Clemson's that great on the defensive line anymore, but that's always kind of been their thing. So if they can get at quarterback for Texas, I think they got a serious shot at upsetting them.
Let's talk, Michael Smith. Let's talk about the ACC itself. ACC got SMU, Clemson, and Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not part of the ACC, Michael. Perhaps ACC health is more positive than believed. I will tell you this. If BYU only had one loss or lost in the conference championship game, they would have been in instead of Clemson. So you can say that, but the Big 12 didn't really have anybody that they could put them up against because their 2 10-2 teams played in the championship game. So I think SMU being in there, they had the 3 seed all locked up. All they had to do was beat Clemson. But I do not think they get a second team in if SMU wins. That's my opinion.
You're both right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you're both right. I think the ACC is more positive than everyone was looking, and I also think the same about the Big 12. The problem with the Big 12 was that the national media had zero clue all year long about ASU. They didn't bother to look into it at all, so they were underranked, underappreciated all year long. And I only talk about them because they're the team that went through. That's also the case with other schools. And you talk about the rankings that I was doing and where I have BYU versus where they have BYU. That's another one of those situations where that just makes no sense whatsoever. How a team that beat SMU, who's going to be in the CFP, was getting knocked in the rankings like BYU was. So, in my opinion, both the Big 12 and the ACC showed off pretty well, but the Big 12 was getting knocked in the rankings unnecessarily. So, whereas the ACC was getting properly ranked, and we're seeing how that's benefiting them. So, that would be my point to that.
Don Scruggs says, good to see you, Don. By the way, thanks for being here. Do you still think the ACC is a dying conference? My answer is the ACC is dying until they're not. Once they get ESPN to re-up their deal in January, once they sign that contract, the ACC is immediately more healthy. Immediately, regardless of what happens with Clemson and Florida State, the ACC is much stronger if they re-up that contract. But until they do, they're a weakened state, and I don't think you can speak with confidence about the conference until they get ESPN to re-up on their deal. And then who knows what happens after they re-up, but you still have lawsuits from Clemson and Florida State. Go ahead.
My answer to that would just be to be determined. I don't actually think it's ever going to die. It's a platform that they can always pull up others to. So as far as dying, going away, no.
I don't think anybody said they're going away.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going away. Never have. What I've said is, if the top brands leave, what do you have left?
Yeah, that's the thing with the ACCs. Like the Big 12 already had its top brands taken, so they're sitting there with some certainty of the future. The ACC has their top brands still sitting there being looked at, so it's just a big unknown at this point.
Evan, the reporter, good to have you here, Evan. Welcome to the channel. By the way, if you're watching us right now, hit that subscribe button so you can get back to us in the future. We're trying to build up our subscriber base, and then give us a thumbs up. Let us know how we're doing in the comment section, and become a part of this thing, because as Realignment speeds back up, we're going to be doing more of these stories, and that'll bring more of you guys in. Anyways, per reports, Rich Rod sold A.D. Renbaker, this is on West Virginia, on the staff that he's bringing to Morgantown. One of the notable names we have learned is former LSU head coach Les Miles to be the offensive coordinator, if I remember right. What do you think about this Rich Rod hire?
I don't know what to think about it. I think Rich Rod is a pretty good coach. You know, he's a bit fiery on the sidelines, but I think that's good for West Virginia. I think they could use that. He's from there, so it kind of falls in what we've been talking about earlier with like Dillingham and schools. You need to find someone to coach there who cares. I think that matters more than their potential as a coach. Like you need to know that like they'll actually will stick around. He kind of sort of got run out of there before, so the fact that he's coming back tells me he really wants that job. So that's a plus one. As far as bringing in Les Miles, I don't know, man. It's kind of a man who's used to being in charge. If they work well together, great. What's interesting to me is if the Longshots could they ever get the GOAT to come back and be their GM? If they really want to get the band back together, get some.
I would be shocked if
legendary names.
Saban came back.
Yeah, but like, I mean, how's Alabama? I mean, does he want to go?
He was already the GM. He was already at the GM at Alabama. Why would he want to be GM at West Virginia?
One, if Alabama's going down, you kind of don't want to be there while it's going down, because part of it's going to get blamed on you, even though you're not there really keeping things going in order. That's kind of tough, man. If you're there every day and you want to go down there and go back to doing what you were doing on a daily basis, that could be tough. Whereas if you go and you do that same job at West Virginia, which you love, and you've got guys there like Rich Rod and Les Miles that are maybe more of your generation of coaches that understand. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. It's just interesting in this new age where some of these guys are moving more into those roles where, I don't know, maybe.
Stormy Cyclone checks in saying Georgia Tech to Immaculate and Moen. So Georgia Tech's an inside joke, just the way it is.
Well, it is, but it's never been a joke for me.
Let's see here. Let me get to some more comments. Bob Swanger checking in saying good evening. Sergeant Pickles saying good evening all. Sergeant Pickles being Bob Swanger and Sergeant Pickles are both valuable members of the Mafia family. And then, of course, Sergeant Pickles is a contributor on the Big Ten Mafia show. Happens every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on this channel.
And that's a great picture.
The one he's on? Mm-hmm. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mount Rainier. There you go. Moen Vision. checking in from the cheap seats saying Notre Dame is above the ACC. The ACC is under their boot. Okay.
I mean, that's a perfect Mullen quote right there.
That's the way it goes. Devo Bronk, Big 12 not okay, in huge trouble out west. All righty. Mike G says, what's the thought on the 6.9 million rating for the Big 12 title game? I've heard good things about it. It's not as good as they want, I'm sure. If you had a Colorado and a BYU in there, it would have been bigger.
Probably.
So,
but I will say that the Big 12, in my opinion, is kind of this little thing I coined, is I think it's going to be the Dion and Dilly show going forward. But that's not to say that no one else could be part of it. I think definitely BYU is on that top rung, and whoever else wants to be. But that's kind of where I think Big 12 schools need to be. You need to have your coaches be kind of these larger than life people that draw to them.
Right.
And so when I say the Dilly and Dion show, it's because they draw attention. Even you can look at some of the things that Dilly does and go, dude, that's a bad look. It doesn't matter because it's drawing attention. And the kids are going to look at that and go, I don't care. I love it. So I think that 6.9 for that game, yeah, it wasn't the teams that everyone was looking forward to. So it probably could have been better, but I think it's all right. I think what would have been bad is if it was a number that was much lower than everyone else.
Right. Less than the ACC, who only got 6 million. But, I agree with you 100%. Antoine Codes checking in. ASU in the house. Valuable member of the Mafia family saying the new PAC is not going to get the same money as the Big 12 ACC. Let's not talk about, because there is no media deal currently for the Pac-12. Let's project down the road a little bit, and let's assume the AAC4 are able to join the Pac-12, which would increase their media buy. How much over 10 million do you think they could get from broadcasters?
Well, is this that point where I get to suggest my theory to you?
Go ahead. Whatever. Sure.
I don't think 4 is enough.
Okay.
And it's not because of anything other than the logistics of traveling west are considerable. Enough so that the AD of Texas at the time when they were considering it said after the Longhorn Network, that was the second reason why they didn't do it. And it's not because of football. It's because of all the other sports. And you have to, because they have to recruit for those too. Places like Texas and some of these schools, they care about how their other sports do, even though, it doesn't bring in all the money. It's still how ADs keep their jobs. So for them to join as full members, that's tough. And to come in with just 4 schools, you're now basically minority voting members as well. So I think it's going to have to be bigger, but you can't do that with all sports. So my idea, since the Big East and the Big 12 are no longer having a scheduling arrangement going forward, that the Pac slips in there, works out a deal with the Big East, gets some schools from the AAC to move into the Big East, and then you take their football teams into the Pac. So I would go, well, now that you've got 7 schools out west and probably 8, I would find 8 schools in the East. And so I would use Connecticut, Villanova, Southern Florida, UTSA, Northern Texas, Tulane, Memphis, and then one more. Get 8 teams out east, all football, and then have yourself a deal with the Big East and let them take all the sports. And then I think at that point in time, it's viable. And with it'd be basically a 16-team conference, you can really control your scheduling, kind of keep it regional, and just have just enough interconnected to make it all one conference. I think you can cover your costs, plus also have a pretty reasonable payout once you start to do either conference tournaments or whatever is coming up. It'd be a pretty good one because you could have 4 divisions of 4. Have the schools that came in from the out west together, have your Oregon State and Washington State with a couple, and then split up those in the East into 2. But otherwise, if you're just trying to bring 4 over, man, that's a tough move. It's a really tough move for those schools. But I do think that, and I've said, if they find the right combo, that 15 million should be reasonable.
You're way above me.
I know it could be high, but
if they could get 12 or 13, I think that would be a good day. Right
that's
now
still a
they're
good day.
estimated, yeah, I think right now they're estimating about 10 for the current Pac-12. Even though they're short one football playing team, they still need to pick up somebody else. 10, I think, is the floor. Where they go up from there really depends on who they bring in. But I agree with you. The more teams they do out east, one, you have better time slots.
Time slots.
You're bringing in markets, and you're definitely going to make more money.
And
so I think,
that includes the conference playoff, like extra added on postseason stuff.
Right. You do basically 2 divisions, East West. You're able to do cross scheduling on a minimum level and keep those costs down for travel.
Yep.
I totally agree with you. I think that would be a great idea. I've been an AAC4 guy since they basically stole Boise State from the Mountain West. I mean, I was hot hoping that they could have pulled that off right then. But they lowballed those teams in the AAC who have to obviously buy their way out of their own contracts. So I think that was a big mistake. And who knows if the Pac-12 will get them back at the table. I want to make an announcement just so everybody knows that Devo Bronk guy busted in on the show last night too. He's not a friend of the show. He was using language. Everybody knows our rules here. I'm pretty lenient, but I permanently banned him. So if you enjoyed his content, you might want to turn the show off because that's not what we do around here. But I permanently banned the guy. I'm sure he'll create a new alias. He'll be back sooner than later. But I appreciate everybody helping me police that. That's not what we do around here. And I appreciate you guys helping me call that stuff out. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see here. Any other comments from the beginning? John Dry checking in. Hey, y'all. Movie Time Blues checking in saying Nova or UConn. Nova and UConn have to be on the list. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, that's how you get the big. That's how you get the Big East involved. That you got to have some, and their game. Sorry, Big 12 guys, but the reason why the Big East might want to do something like that is to protect themselves from losing UConn to you guys, because they just got that deal with TNT, with Fox, and with NBC. They got to protect that. And UConn is so much of that value. If I was them, I'd be pooping myself worried that you guys are going to steal UConn at any moment. So if someone out west comes and wants to work out this kind of a deal with us where we could maybe actually save UConn from losing their football program, I'm all in. Like, yeah, all right, that's fine. What do we do?
It's interesting you bring up UConn because something occurred to me yesterday. And I haven't talked about it. Nobody's heard on my shows any of these things. But I think now UConn is more palatable for the Big 12 because they're already a down conference compared to where the perception is in the college football playoff landscape. I don't think bringing in a UConn who might take years to build up is really going to take them down any farther. There's not much lower they can go as a power conference member. So I think there is a possibility maybe the presidents will look at that and say, okay, maybe this is going to be a tougher climb than we wanted. The shortcut to get up there isn't evident. Maybe UConn becomes more palatable. I find it hard to believe that they're going to want UConn football. And I would love a basketball UConn only. But, I don't know. We'll have to see if the members of the presidents of these different universities in the Big 12 look at UConn a little differently now.
Yeah, it's one of those situations maybe where you need to not let perfect be the enemy of good. Because the Big East knows you're coming. You've already telegraphed that twice. They know you're coming back for UConn in the future. So they need to be doing something right now to protect themselves from that. And that's why I say something like this, if it helps them, because they just lost their deal with you too. Like that's kind of telling. Like when the Big 12 is like, yep, we don't even want to have our scheduling alliance the week of Big 12 versus Big East anymore with you. It's it's one of those things where relations are breaking down there, in my opinion. And so they know you're coming. They're going to do something eventually. So if that's really what you want, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, because they're going to figure out some way to keep UConn.
FF18 Buffs has a question for you. Can you rate the next 10 teams that would say be the best fit in Power 2? Notre Dame, Clemson, UNC, Florida State, Miami, Colorado, Kansas, ASU, Georgia Tech, U of U, and BYU. They want 10, and I believe there's 12 there.
Well, number one on that case is always going to be Notre Dame. Number two, I'm going to put North Carolina because both the Big Ten and the SEC want them. It's not like that straight up value. It's how much you wanted. Number three for me, people are going to say this is crazy talk, but I mean, for the Big Ten would be Georgia Tech. That's not for the SEC. I think probably Florida State, I think, brings the most value to both of them. And obviously the Big 12. Like Florida State was to come to the Big 12, it would be your flagship.
It would be awesome.
So Notre Dame, North Carolina, awesome. Florida State, Georgia Tech, ASU, Miami, Colorado, Kansas. Actually, Colorado, Kansas, Utah, BYU. It's tough because Utah schools, it's a small Western state.
Yeah, demographics aren't.
SEC's not interested. Big Ten's got 4 out there. It's tough because if they were somewhere else located, those would be much more valuable. Those are really 2 good gets. It's just there's some other elements to this that kind of hold them back.
I agree. Geography's always been against schools in Utah, and you can't transplant your school in South Carolina, unfortunately. So it is what it is. Those schools know their limitations. That's why Utah was so frantically desperate when the Pac-12 blew up and was doing anything they could to get into the Big Ten. As we see it now, the Big Ten barely even wants Notre Dame. The chances that they expand again are very, very low for the next several years. We get to maybe 2029, 2030, 2031, 5-6 years down the road. Then again, these conversations will come back. But at the end of the day, I think the demographics in Utah are just not going to support it. I think Colorado, if Deion stays there, is a brand that definitely people would want around.
I think that 1 year is an anomaly, but the numbers that they're getting in the second year, it makes it real. That's a real thing now that we have to look at and say this is a model for the future. I think that you're going to see a lot of these kind of unique hires in the future.
Agreed. I completely agree. Ryan Willie checking in. The Badger is in the house. Good to see you, Ryan. Definitely a valuable member of the Mafia family. One of the OGs, actually. $2 super chat. Indiana will upset Notre Dame. That would not shock me.
They could. It's really tough because we actually don't know, right? Like the arguments against Indiana's inclusion are not garbage arguments because we just don't know. We don't really know. We saw them against Ohio State, wasn't great, but that's the type of game you learn from. So we don't know what they're evolving into after that game because we didn't get another test. So they might come out here and just shock the world, and we have to take a serious look at them after this. Or Notre Dame will just run right over them because they've got one of the best running games going right now.
We're at the top of the hour. We're going to do about 20 minutes of Q&A after that. Sorry, at the bottom of the hour. We started a half hour early. We're going to go about another half hour for Q&A, so stick around for that. Really quick, before we do that, I want to share, it is, again, that time of year. We're doing our Bowl Pick'em. It's currently done on the Capital One site. It's the site we did last year. Here's the link. I'm going to put it in the comments section. And sign up, please. Join us and try to beat me. I think I was 4th or 5th last year. I'm not sure where Immaculate was. But it's free. So sign up there. The instructions, the password, and all that are on that tweet. And join us. I think last year we had like 55 or 60 people participate. I was shooting for about 100. So we got 80 people watching right now. Everybody go to that link and sign up. It's free, and we really want to have you around. All right. Immaculate, you sent me 2 messages. Let's see. That's what I was doing. That's what
Yeah.
I'm doing
I
next.
was going to say, I'm not great at pick 'em. I think
No,
I'm better
that's fine.
afterwards looking at ranking and analyzing. My
All right.
picks always
Well,
go bad.
let's get to that. So the last topic we wanted to touch on before we get to Q&A, and this is let me take the link to this thread. This is Immaculates, and is it top 25, right?
Yeah, it
Immaculate,
was
why
the
don't you kind
final.
of tell everybody what this is to you?
Well, this was an experiment I started about, I don't know, maybe halfway into the season. It was, okay, how do we do ranking differently? We all have the AP poll. It's 1,800 plus people. Half of them don't know what they're doing. The other half do. It turns into an absolute mess. And it's all based on opinion of who you think beats who should they play the next week. That's kind of what polls and rankings are during the season. Well, this is intended to kind of be more of a situation where you're ranking what they've done in the past. And it doesn't matter. Like, you look at this and you say, yeah, but Texas will beat Arizona State any given day. So why would you put them below them? Because that's not what it's about. It's about what they have done and ranking based upon that. So it was kind of an experiment. It wasn't perfect. And there was times where people pointed out some flaws in it, and I changed it from there. But I think it's an interesting experiment and look into how to do this based upon most deserving instead of best.
Let's talk about the top 15, because the ones that are below that, the bottom of these picks, not so much is important for actually affecting who was going to get into the playoff. Starting with 15, you have South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss, 3 SEC teams, which couldn't have made SEC people very happy. BYU, Tennessee, Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State, SMU, Texas, Arizona State, Boise State, Notre Dame, Georgia, and Oregon. And I guess what we need to say is that Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State, that's exactly the order they went in for the CFP.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to me, Arizona State had 2 losses. Boise State had 1. Boise State's 1 loss was to the number 1 team, and it was very close. Boise State's offense, I don't know if people realize it because Ashton Jeanty gets so much talk, but their whole offense is pretty balanced. The quarterback, if you watch a game, you'll see like they pass the ball too. It's just they got no defense. So it turns into a shootout with them. So to me, people are like, oh, I don't want to see them. I'm like, why don't you want to see them? For a lot of people, what they like in football is high scoring, exciting back and forth matches. That's the team you should want to see. So that's why they're there where they're at. I thought that they were just right there above Arizona State and that they deserved that. Notre Dame had that big loss, but every other game they had going on, they were solidly winning. So, they had an anomaly loss. Georgia, 2 losses, but when you look at their wins, you kind of got to give credit is, and they beat Texas twice in a row. So they got up to that number 2 spot based upon that win. But yeah, I didn't just put them there because they're conference champions. If you were to go back through the weeks, you would see how Arizona State and Boise State were creeping up. I think I had Arizona State at 12 going into conference championship weekend. And the explanations, if you kind of go down to the next part, you'll see why. Because every single team that they jumped either didn't play in the conference championship games or they lost. So, like, I wasn't having, like conference championship game losers getting jumped or falling down below teams. Like SMU, they didn't fall at all, except for teams that jumped them that won. So it was just kind of a way of doing this to where your previous ranking matters. And you just look at what happened that week in order to affect the ranking. Instead of, when I was watching AP polls and even the committee rankings, it just kind of seemed like they weren't necessarily taking the last week or previous weeks into consideration. It was just,
well, it did look like half the time they weren't watching the games.
Yeah, like the way BYU dropped, I was kind of like,
yeah,
does that even make sense?
Yeah,
it didn't make a lot of sense. So that's why, even in mine though, BYU is just on the outside looking in. They're at that number 12 spot, but Clemson at 16.
Yeah, Clemson jumped up. That's right.
That's why when people saying, well, why wouldn't you have Clemson higher? It's the South Carolina loss.
Yes.
I still couldn't pop them above South Carolina. They were capped. And that's why Ole Miss and Alabama and South Carolina are listed like that, because of the wins and losses against each other. South Carolina couldn't jump them, even though I think if you were to put them on a field at this point in time, South Carolina beats them both.
I think South Carolina might be the hottest team in the country.
But the whole season matters.
I know.
Yep.
They ran. So Baylor was 8-4. Mm-hmm. They were also one of the hottest teams in the country. Arizona State fit that bill. Clemson won their championship game, so you have to put them in. So I think the final 12 compared to where everybody was ranked, I think it was pretty accurate. They missed on a couple. I think BYU was the first one out. I agree with you there. The committee had the committee had Alabama, then Ole Miss. But I think considering you put this out before the playoff picks came out, and the way this turned out, you did a pretty good job. Obviously, everybody should know Notre Dame being number 3 doesn't matter because they're not in a conference.
Nope. Yep.
So they can't play for one of those top 4 seeds.
Yeah, and this is the ranking. This isn't the seeding. The seeding you would base off of this to seed them into a tournament. And I think I made a post connected to it. Doesn't matter. But yeah, this is just the ranking.
Did you post one down here? No, that's the same one.
No, like connected to it, like after.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not seeing it attached.
It's not that
Anyways,
big a deal.
Yeah, it doesn't
People
matter.
can do that. But yeah, it was just kind of an experiment on like how to better do this. Now, if that was actually be the case, I would still want to have, 5 to 10 solid analysts in there doing that, and every decision that they make on it has to be explained. Like we had an explanation page, so people know, they get it, they get why you're doing this. Right. That's also giving up power, right? Like people who run this, that they kind of want to have the power to maybe do something in their own way for business purposes. But, it's not really kind of the pure way to do it.
While we're an hour in, please subscribe on the channel. Make sure you're following us both on Twitter. Turn on your notifications for both YouTube and on Twitter so you know when we put out tweets, like this tweet storm that Immaculate did. Make those notifications really make a difference for posts and reposts. You can turn that on or off, and then sort of get into this because we have shows all week long. This is a Wednesday show special, but as we move forward going into the off season, we're going to have more shows, especially just for members, special programs. Wild Ute did another Wild Ute University the other day. That's special. That was basically about how teams milk and they take advantage on the conferences they're in. They take advantage and sort of follow along and get carried, not because they're the best team, but because of where they're at, and they're sort of sucking the life out of the conferences they're in. A lot of fun stuff we do for members. Anyway.
That was Indiana for the longest time.
It was, yes. Yeah. 11-1 is good, but they didn't make their championship game. And the one team they played that was ranked, they lost. Pretty good.
Right. But I mean, at least now they're spending money. Like they were not even spending their money. They're sitting on surplus.
Right. So. I got you. Yep. Sergeant Pickles checks in, gives us an update. $2 super chat saying Belichick to UNC is official. I guess it's a 3-year, $30 million contract. He will be the
public.
Yeah, public university.
So the whole contract's going to become visible, and that's going to become kind of a model probably for others going forward.
Sam Kim follows that up by saying 3-year, $30 million deal. North Carolina Regents promised Belichick they would spend on the assistants and provide $20 million in NIL money like all Ohio State. Yeah. So $20 million, build your team, and become competitive. I seriously believe that's what they're doing.
Yeah, you're going to have to start thinking of UNC as a tier 1.
I think so.
They don't have the results right now, so I get people are going to be like, whatever.
Right.
But the future is about spending. And we pointed this out in the show and previously with Georgia Tech, and people didn't really believe, but we pointed out, look at the spending that they're doing, 40% increases, renovations and additions to their stadium. That's what matters. And it's already showing with Georgia Tech. And this is just like a year or two later. So expect like by 26, you're going to be seeing a different North Carolina.
I'm just creating a banner. I want to put this up. 1 week bye. Okay, I've got a question for you. I answered it last night on the show, but I wanted to get your opinion. So the Big 12 only got one team in, but they got a first round bye. The ACC got two teams in, but they're the 11th and 12th rated, meaning they're playing on the road, and the likelihood they win their road games is much less than 50%. So if you were sitting in a boardroom and you were Brett Yormark, would you be happier you have the bye, or would you prefer to have two teams?
Well, if I'm going to look at it like a business, the way this works this year is there's payouts per round. So ASU and those schools all three get $4 million for the first round.
That's right.
So even if those teams go out, they've still made $8 million for the ACC.
Right.
ASU gets the second $4 million for playing in the second week. So if they lose in that first one, it's even Steven. You see what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah.
Both would have made $8 million. So
I'm not talking about the money at all. I'm just talking about the teams.
You said as your mark. That's how you're kind of thinking about it, is money wise. But just in terms of like how it looks now, you're going to be talking about the Big 12 in the second week when you aren't talking about the ACC. So there's that. The ACC is going to turn around and say, well, we got two in and you only got one. I mean, both sides are going to just throw the same argument at you. It's basically whatever side you're on, you're seeing your side win it. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, it's an opinion game.
Yeah. So, but if ASU beats Texas or Clemson, well, especially if they beat Clemson, now that's a fun matchup right there for this argument, right?
Right.
ASU versus Clemson to see who goes on. That would be fun.
I think it would be a fun game. I think ASU, whoever comes through that bracket, at least has a puncher's chance.
Yeah.
So
but that game is in Clemson territory. So
it's
going to be ASU fans have not been great followers and travelers. So that's going to be their first big test in how much they support Dillingham and this new look ASU team, because Clemson is going to come to that game.
If I had to choose between both options and they gave the commissioner a chance to have one of the two things, I would probably, my first thought is to have two teams. It gives you double the opportunity to go on to the next round. But if you're really talking X's and O's and where your best success rate comes out, I think that bye really means a lot. So it's basically 3 weeks that they're getting to just sit back and wait. Texas has to play and then play again. So or Clemson. So we'll have to see. Obviously, at the end of the tournament, if Clemson wins the whole thing, we'll know, right? Because Clemson was the champion with 3 losses. If SMU wins it, they have only 2 losses, and that's something they can brag in. But if ASU wins their one game, makes it to the semifinal, then the page turns.
We're going to find out something that may end up becoming an unintended consequence. And that's, we don't quite know if that bye is actually a good thing. Because
we won't know
how many weeks after conference championship game.
Right.
These teams could be a little cold. So the teams playing in that first week are, back in the groove.
Yes.
And you're coming into that next week, you're in the groove, you're rolling again. Whereas that team that's coming off a bye, they're probably going to be a little cold, not quite on their A game at the start of that game. So those teams with that bye, while your team may be a little more rested, not quite as hurt, maybe some guys get hurt in that first week, we're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out. But it could go either way. We might find out that bye is not as great a thing as we thought. And what does that do to the CFP?
I think they need to get rid of byes, go 16 teams, have 5 champions that get in, plus Notre Dame, and guarantee 2 spots to both the ACC and the Big 12. That's what I'd like to see.
For people who do not like the byes, you should be hoping that the majority of teams that got the byes lose in that first.
I would agree with you. I think that's right.
Pull for the other teams. If you hate byes, you want Oregon to lose. You want Georgia to lose. Because if those teams go out, ESPN and all those folks in there are going, okay, this sucks.
Yeah, they will blow it up. I agree 100%.
Yeah. So that's what you should pull for.
Mark Bowman checking in, another valuable member of the Mafia family. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us, Mark. It's great to see you. $5 super chat. Music City Bowl. Iowa will be without Caleb Johnson, Mizzou without Luther Burden. Do they cancel each other out?
I'd have to see what else Mizzou is going. Iowa has other issues too. How
are they going to score points is my question.
Actually, there are other running backs that have been doing well. Sullivan, my opinion, is the quarterback for the future because he's the perfect quarterback for that system. And with him, there are other running backs. There was a game where I think they had over 300 yards rushing. Caleb didn't even have 200 yards. The other guys were doing just as well because what Sullivan does is he makes the defenders take a step towards him. Like they cannot sell out on the running back. So he's given his running backs an extra step or two. So if he's playing good and playing well and not getting himself hurt, I still actually think that Iowa has the edge. But honestly, I don't know. Like there's, I don't know. It's hard for me to pick against Iowa, but they're just not good in bowls.
The bowl games are all, in my opinion, because everybody opts out and there's no big anxiousness assigned to them because the finals are always going to be determined now by the playoff. I think there maybe are some intriguing matchups, but of all of them, the one that probably has the most intrigue is BYU versus Colorado. I'm not saying that as a BYU guy. I'm saying that as somebody who's watching a game that both teams, 99% of their teams they're going to play. There's not going to be any opt-outs. Travis Hunter's going to play. Shadur Sanders is going to play. All BYU's defense is going to play, which was very, very good this last year. I think that game, not only will it be highly visible, a lot of people are going to watch the game, but I think it's going to be the most competitive.
Yeah, because that's what you said. The top cornerback for Iowa, he's opting out. So there's holes, man. It's tough, and people are going to look at it and go, "Oh, see, Iowa's bad." It's like, man, you're really messing with the team's chemistry when you start having these. So it's really hard to tell. So yeah, like you're saying, like that BYU Colorado game may be one of the best bowls to watch, just because those are complete teams.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Some more comments. We've got about 15 minutes, so everybody knows we're counting down 15 minutes, and then we're going to get out of here. All comments, I'll try to get to them. I've got a bunch marked, but I always defer to Super Chat, so you know, and then member tweets or member messages I try to get to for first as well. Sid Irish, it would be hilarious. Illinois in a hoodie and his 24-year-old chick wearing his 6 Super Bowl rings. Obviously, he's talking about Bill Belichick at North Carolina, and his girlfriend that I think is like is she 24? I thought she was 28. But when he's 70, does it really matter?
Bill's Bill, man.
Yeah, I know.
It's having him on campus is
telling you it's gonna be a circus, just like Dion.
I mean, and this is UNC. Like UNC has there's
they have a lot of rich boosters.
This is like there's a certain way to act, and it's like, okay,
I think this is all about PR, and they're trying to duplicate what Dion's done at Colorado.
Absolutely.
100%. I'm 1,000% positive that's what this is about. It's not about Bill Belichick being an X's and O's guy. It's about him coming in, being a personality, and then people glomming on and dumping money into the program.
Yeah.
So that's what this is. Don't get caught up on the fact that he's got a 24-year-old girlfriend or whether he's going to be the coach or not. That's not the question.
Yeah, because they come in and they put money to the AD. Now all of a sudden they get Bill Belichick in their ads. They get, it's a business move. And there's going to be some things they're going to have to suck up because there's going to be some distasteful stuff that comes with it.
I just hope maybe Andy Reid retires and then comes to BYU. That would be awesome.
Now, would he do that or would he go to Kansas?
He's not going to go anywhere. He's NFL all the way. Timothy Green checking in again, saying this has been another great show as usual. Play, like, and subscribe and share. Also comments. Thank you very, very much. Timothy's one of our moderators around here, and we appreciate him. And yeah, please, if you guys could give us that thumbs up, subscribe, and share, that would be great. We really, really appreciate it. Mike G, I think your mark should be happy about the bye. Most 12 pundits are complaining about BSU being ahead of them. I'm past that. I'm not talking about that anymore. I think it's a valid complaint. Boise State plays a minor league schedule. Best win was a loss. Oh, maybe just this second. Last time I'm going to say anything about Boise State, I just think both the ACC and the Big 12 with a 2-loss team as a champion should have been above Boise State. That's the last time I'm going to say it. I'm not going to talk about it again. Do you want to say anything, Immaculate, since this is the first time I'm asking you?
His last comment, part of that comment is right. And for me, with the way I ranked them, their best game was a loss because that showed us that they could play with anybody. And so to me, when I look at the rest of their schedule and I say, yeah, it wasn't like a super impressive schedule, but I already know what they got. And so then they just went out and they took care of business. And that's what you have to do. And yeah, they didn't have a great schedule, but they did everything they had to do. And they gave us this example of what they could do. So now I think they deserve a spot to go and show us what they can do against this type of competition. And if they end up getting ran out of the room, that's fine. That's okay, because we don't actually know. That everyone looks at the schedule and thinks they know, but we actually have to see them play one of these games to know. And I think they've deserved that chance.
Glenn Lewin checking in from the Philippines. Good morning. Good to see you, Glenn. Thanks for checking in and saying hi. I really appreciate it. Joke Walters says, dudes, just copy the FCS. It's amazing. 24 teams, top 8 seeds get buys, home games until the national championship. You can't do the bowl game. You can't do the home games all the way to the end because you have bowls that are built. The Rose Bowl, for instance, they're going to want their piece. They want games to be on their grounds. So that piece of it, maybe some of the lower rounds, first round games, I could see all being home games. Second round, though, that's when it gets iffy.
Yeah, there's some complications. Like the reason why FCS is football championship subdivision, FPS is football bowl division subdivision. They have bowl contracts for now, which hold them in. So they have to make that be part of their solution for now. When those contracts come up, I don't know. You could be right. Maybe they go to something like that. I don't know. Or, maybe the conferences do something that then leads into something. I do think that when they have the chance to move away from the bowls, I think the CFP goes away. It's a headache they won't need anymore. They can create something new. They created the CFP. So we'll see. But I get why people feel this way because it's much more pure.
Sam Kim, as long as Notre Dame keeps getting their deal with NBC, why would they join a conference? Sam, they wouldn't. They're not going to join a conference until they're forced to. It's a nice thought, though, Notre Dame plus the tree. That would be Stanford. Yeah. I can see them being traveling partners, certainly joining the Big Ten, for instance. But unless they force Notre Dame, force Notre Dame, they can't participate in the playoff at all. Unless they're in a conference, I think they're going to stay independent.
Yeah, that's exactly what Swarbrick said. He said on an interview with, was it Dan Patrick? That
yes, it was Dan Patrick.
Yeah. The only way they'd ever join a conference is if they no longer had access.
Yep.
He says, and he basically gave them the model, like, hey, you want us to join a conference? Take away our access. How does that happen? I don't know. But they will continue to stay independent until that's taken away.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think it changes either. Me versus Echo Chamber checking in, saying, "What's up, guys? Good to see you." Me versus Echo Chamber. I'm glad you stopped in and said hi. Clay Johansson, go blue. Moen's not here, so you don't have to worry about the Ohio State counter programming. Michigan, did Michigan make a bowl game this year?
Yes, they're actually playing Alabama.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
I only know that because of those SEC short guys in those videos.
Oh, those are pretty funny, actually.
Oh my gosh. Those guys
Shonsky saying Iowa needs to figure out that the run pass option isn't run punt option?
I mean, punt to win.
I mean, you guys have tried for sure.
I mean, double-digit wins.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Not this season, but last season.
It tops out. There's a maximum that goes to. I don't think that goes forever.
You don't want to depend upon that, obviously, but it's nice to know that your defense can help do that to where you're slowly working your way down the field.
Right, I agree.
But punting, but yes, they do need to get that run pass option going, and I think Sullivan will help with that.
Keep chopping. Rutgers checking in. UNC will be very popular bandwagon team. Nothing wrong with that at all. Tons of NFL folks will tune in. We're not saying anything bad about it.
Fan team. They're going to be
huge. Absolutely. Well, their brand is amazing because of basketball, right? They just need to have football brought up, just like Colorado.
I think they're switching. Happen. I think, look at Kansas, #1 brand. But what are they? Where's all their money going? It's going toward basket or football.
Right.
It's the same with UNC.
Well, it will change, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mike G says, as a BYU fan, this season exceeded all expectations. It very much did, Mike. We came about 3 yards short of being in the championship game. I had them 4 for 8 or 3 and 9. I had them generally 5 or 7 or 6 and 6. So we're not far off there. They definitely exceeded. They went out. They're the #1 team to over excel this last year on Kelly's breakdown. I can't remember Kelly report. Kelly Ford. Kelly Ford's thing that he does. Definitely that was really, really good. A couple more comments in here, and then we're going to get out of here. Sid Irish, Notre Dame will be forced into a conference before 2030. That's coming from a Notre Dame fan. If they were to move, I think that's a good timeline. What do you think?
Yeah, that's the last year before the end of that
next
deal. I think that's what that deal was all about. Like, we never got to hear how much the deal was.
Right.
So that tells me the deal was considerably lower than what Notre Dame wanted, and they didn't want it to go public, and NBC obliged because they're good. They're both good partners. They've been together for a while, but they had to do things like that reality show just to get it through. So I do think that it's their last deal.
Brandon Unruh. Good to see you, Brandon. I haven't seen you for a little bit. Thanks for coming back. We need to go back to a 4-team playoff with the champs of each Power 4 conference. Give the G5 their own championship. Make Notre Dame join a conference if they want to be included. No more committee. No more bias. So we're not going to get into it tonight. We don't have time. Yeah. But Immaculate's got a whole thing about championship.
I better not even touch that.
Championship stuff that we'll go through at a future date. It'll only be about a way to possibly fix the way that the actual tournaments put together. Maybe you do go back to 4 teams. I'm not saying I like that, but that's one of the ideas, and we will explore that fully. We just don't have time to do it tonight, but we all agree that we wish Notre Dame was in a conference. So that's it. That's not going to change. One more question, and we're going to get out of here, Immaculate. FF18 buffs. Immaculate, where do you see private equity being more properly placed? Program level, conference level, national level. Biggest impact, I think.
#1's conference level. #2 is probably program level. I'm not like national level. I guess maybe you're talking about like the CFP is doing that, which is still pretty good. My problem with the program level, and I'm not really squared up enough with this to know, but I kind of wonder how limited state-funded universities will be in dealing with this, because basically what private equity is doing is you're buying something. You're buying some access, whether it's control over some certain marketing rights or whatever they're doing. I don't know how legally some of these schools can sell that. So we're going to find that out. But yeah, conference level to me is huge. And then conference kind of doles it out. So that way some of the other schools that may not get some attention will still get some attention. But conference program, then national.
There was an idea floated this last offseason by a private equity firm that said they'd give college football, the entire thing, $13 billion to create one thing. It would be about 70 teams, and they would compete for national championship. You'd probably break into regions for travel, and all the top teams would play each other, and they basically get rid of the conference level control, and it would be a national program. Nobody really signed on for that.
That's where you touched. I was waiting, but you touched upon it, so I just wanted to point at that moment that's when you touched upon the problem. The money, all that stuff, I'm sure that's what got them in the room.
Right.
But what then kind of gets everyone cooled off is when you talk about taking control.
Yeah.
Because that's how you control the future money, future opportunities. And so giving up control for some of these folks is going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, especially, a Sankey or a Petiti.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic, Immaculate. I appreciate you coming on. Before everybody takes off, make sure you follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, hit that thumbs up. We appreciate everybody coming on. These are special shows. These are not going to happen every day. So we will be doing this again with Immaculate. We'll use him where he's most effective in the future. But I want to thank him for coming on the show tonight and kind of tell everybody what you're doing now on Twitter to get them back into following you. Some of the ideas that you're going to be exploring in this off season.
Well, yeah, on season it was kind of we tried to do some challenging things to the system. Didn't work out that great, but we're getting back into realignment season, and so if that's something that you're really trying to stay on the edge of, then I do highly suggest follow me and these guys on Twitter. These things are coming down by the minute, and I think that coming into January and February, it's going to be coming hard and heavy. So if this interested you at all, whether in a positive or negative way, check me out, Immaculate View on X, and you'll probably see daily activity going on as long as this is still heating up.
OPD Don's checking in at the very end of the show. He says, I must be drinking. I swear I see Immaculate. It's true. He's back.
A little grayer, but we're here.
We're going to dole him out in very small pieces, though, OP. So don't expect a big
I get burned out.
Flood of content. He's only one guy, so there's only so much he can do. But we're certainly grateful that he was able to come on tonight. And I thank everybody for joining us tonight. Thanks for being with us as we continue to grow this brand, College Football Mafia Network, and everything on Twitter. You guys are awesome. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you. And we will see you on Friday night for the Big Freaking Friday show. That's 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It'll be me, Wild Ute, and Moen. And, we'll kind of celebrate what's going on in the weekend. And then we'll start to do some previews of the CFP games, which are coming up sooner than later. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. For Immaculate, sitting right over next to me, I am Bomber, and we will see you next time. Bye. Peace out.